You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to Storyteller Conclave. This is a show all about helping you run the best tabletop role-playing game that you can, whether you are a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to take your game to the next level. I am Sarah.
I'm Rob.
How we doing, Rob?
You know what? I'm trying to figure that out.
Yep.
I think this week has been oddly indiscernible. Like, it's the opposite of divination. Like, I feel like I botched divination rolls to get to this point.
I think I've been having the same kind of week. I have I think the time changeover has done me in, and the gloomy weather and the cold and stuff like that, and I just kind of had a funk.
Yeah, I could see that.
I realized I didn't paint any miniatures whatsoever. I've got a backlog of miniatures I need to paint.
Yeah,
I didn't do crap in the month of October.
Jack and Squad got done.
Done.
Now, I will say this. We at least got the show sheet done.
Yeah.
We have a good topic.
Yep.
And it's a new month.
And it's a new month.
You know what a new month tells us?
It tells us it's a new beginning and a new chance to start over.
And new Patreon rewards.
New Patreon rewards.
Speaking of which, we have a contributor. Knox has stepped up.
This
guy right here, who is with us, who hoorahs our whole thing. He has been doing an amazing thing, and for that we love you, Knox. We love you very much.
Absolutely.
So he has now earned a spot at the table where now once a month he can actually submit us, and he already has. We're not going to say what it is, but we'll get to it. An idea for the show. And so we're going to fit that into the schedule and do a Knox request.
Yeah, and I think it's a great request too.
Yeah, it is a great request. Really great request. So I will say if you'd like to join us on this journey, you too can get up to the contributor level on Patreon and join us. And if we get too many of those, you know what? That's fine.
That's fine.
We will do shows by request.
That's a problem I would love to have.
I'd love to have that problem, but that's not what we're doing today.
No,
we're doing divination, but you guys already knew that. I thought that was kind of funny and appropriate. Because when we sketched out kind of our show list, I looked at divination and I said, this is a topic we can talk about, but we can expand on, because so much of it is wrapped in perception, not just, the idea of doing divination based on perception in that sense, and that foresight is perception based. But the fact that people have a perception of what divination is in a system, and sometimes it's adversarial. I find that I think we can unlock that a little bit, and we can help move away from it.
There's a lot of stuff that kind of go into that, like adversarial, DM versus players relationship, and that's definitely I think divination is probably like in the top 3 things that become very adversarial.
Yeah. So let's talk about what divination is in a, I will say, system agnostic way. And I was doing things and looking at different opinions on it, like, is it a dream of something terrible to come that's inevitable, or is it intuition about something else, or is it a glimpse of truth in the case of, like, asking a GM a question? And I found a really great paragraph from a blog post, which is RPG Pundit, and he does a lot of discussion, simple, like, 1-page blog posts about different things, and he went over divination in systems, but he took it from, like, a really fantastic perspective. So I'm going to read this. It's a little long, but I think it's going to help us square up divination as a whole, and that is, divination works by looking at the present and at the flow of events with a special perspective. And I think that right there is the simplistic form of what divination is. It is simply a perspective of events present and the flow of those moving forward. And again, perspective is the key there. Now, a divination system is a system of symbols that put together create a kind of scale model or organizational system to describe reality. And I was like, okay, that's really neat. So whether it's tarot or reading bones
or tea leaves
or any number of things. Because again, it's perception based. So like, if I'm communing with the god of the wild and I ask a question, I may see leaves floating in a certain direction, and I know what that means.
A squirrel may chitter at you in a certain way, and that's the answer.
Right, and so it is a system of that, those markers, those symbols to help us. Now, as symbols, these systems can intuitively connect with our human consciousness, so that even someone who has almost zero experience with a deck of tarot cards could just intuitively feel their way around them, and maybe, assuming they've exercised their intuition at all, get a glimpse of the message a card reading is trying to tell them. But a magician, on the other hand, studies these symbols profoundly, connecting them on both an intuitive and intellectual level. Thus, he gains an ability, he develops a very good skill at being able to use divination system to take a reading of his own situation, of the balance of his elements, of the trends that are going on for him in the present, and how likely these are to go in the future, and get ideas of how to shift them subtly in order to make a positive change. Likewise, he can do the same for other people. And I think that's the succinct difference is that as we look at systems, we're looking at people who are practiced in this. Like anybody in a system could technically try and divine and use bones or tarot or whatever, to come up with something. And it might give them some kind of an answer with some intuition. That's a raw skill check. But someone who has studied in it, a master of the craft, is going to understand it on a different level. And it was made very plain to me. I was talking with my wife about it, and she does tarot. And I was saying, a normal person will look, they pull a card and like, oh, it's a death card. That means it's a bad omen. And she immediately was just like, no,
that means change.
It means change. And I'm like, and that's the difference. You're practiced and studied. And not just the one card. You're looking at everything around it. You're looking at the situation. You're looking at the question. And that gives you a different intuition and reading on the whole situation. So that kind of a design changes your mind a little bit about what divination really is and what it means. And we're kind of keep that in the back of our head as we kind of shift through the discussion. I'm going to say runes. I'll get there, Technolich. I personally am a runes person. I'm a person of runes. My wife is the tarot reader, but I've always done runes. But yeah, there's different ways that different systems have used this, and I think even moving between systems of different versions of D&D, they have shifted their thoughts on how divination should work. And I think 5th edition has made it a very system-centric, but still giving you some room. They've worked out how it should work in the system. But I mean, there's still the DM has to answer yes/no questions, but they could be cryptic or filled with riddles. That's great, but there's some things I'm going to talk about that later that I don't necessarily agree with. But you've got a 5th edition, which, I mean, divination's got a whole school. There's foresight. There's all kinds of stuff in that.
There's tons of things that fall under divination.
Yeah. But the one that I think everybody follows is the divination spell itself. And I put the reading in there for what it is. I don't know if we want to go through it, but effectively, the way that it works is that there's a cumulative chance also that you could get better results if you ask the question multiple times. But effectively, the reply may be short phrase or a cryptic rhyme or an omen. And that, I think, at least for my opinion, does a disservice to the player. It's not a low-level spell. It doesn't, it takes time. It's an effort. It's no different than, a swordsman who's perfected their art walking up and trying to take on, some kind of Goliath creature. Sure. If they roll well, they do well. But this person has studied and done things. Why are we giving them cryptic responses that they may not understand? I think they're too studied to not understand them.
I mean, I kind of go a little bit both ways on this one. On one hand, I absolutely 100% agree with you that if it's their thing, if they expend the resources, they have access to the spell, they're studied in it, they should be able to intuit a good answer from it.
Right.
But there are some times when those answers just aren't certain.
I agree.
That's I think when it's okay. Like,
I agree.
Give them a foggy answer because the outcome is foggy.
Correct. And that's that infinite realities where it's based on perspective.
Sure.
I mean, if you're asking a god, where can I find the sword of damnation? In his mind, time may be relative. But at the same time, he might also be like, you'll find it in the hands of this person.
Sure.
Great. That doesn't tell you where he is, but that's the honest answer of where you're going to find that damn sword.
Right. But if it's will we win this battle?
Right.
Dude, I don't know.
No.
If the wind is at your back and the strength is in your arm, then victory shall be sung at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. Nice question. Please move on. But on the other hand, you have spells that give you foresight, that literally state foresight. Right? They're not necessarily a ability bonus, but it's something that gives you an edge in combat. And I think that is a form of divination. Of
course it is.
In that sense. So that in those cases, you're giving them advantage, for instance, on a combative type of role where maybe there's that instance where you go to do something and there's an effect change. That isn't something that could happen. That's something that the role gives the could. And then it's up to how you explain the situation to change that. There's
I think what you're talking about is the True Strike, I think is the name of the spell that you're referring to. There's actually one of my of Sean's favorite authors is Brandon Sanderson. He wrote this whole series of book called the Mistborn series, and in there, the magic system that Brandon Sanderson wrote about, there are different metals and alloys that you can actually imbibe to give you certain powers.
Gotcha.
And one of these special metals allows you to see 1 or 2 seconds into the future.
Okay.
And so basically anybody who can use this particular ability essentially becomes an unstoppable killing machine because I already know where you're going to dodge, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I not only know that you're going to dodge 3 feet to the right, but I know you're also going to try to sweep my leg out from under me. So I'm already jumping and striking to the right when I make my next move. So not only do I hit you, but you miss me,
Right. Yeah, and I like that in foresight. But then you shift gears immediately to something like system-wise, so like 7C. There's literally a class called where you're basically a fate witch.
Yep.
Where you're dealing with fate. Now they handle divination differently, and I found it a bit challenging to work with.
Well, 7C handles all magic differently.
It really does. It takes a twist, but particularly this one. So. In it, they have strands of fate, which are cups, staves, swords, and what am I missing?
Staves, swords, cups, coins.
Coins, thank you. So,
or pentacles, depending on where you go with that.
So you have cups for passion, you have coins for commerce, you have swords for conflict, and staves for authority.
Yep.
As you grow within the abilities, you get the ability to sense, at first, what's going on. You then have... apparently our stream went dead. Oh, I hope it comes back.
Well, one person's stream went dead.
Yep.
I don't know if anybody...
So you have the start with the basically a degree where you can sense things. You can tell the connections between someone that is strong, whether it be passion, whether it be commerce between two individuals. Second, you can tug or stretch them. So in other words, I can say like, hey, I can see that this person and this person have a very strong bond with commerce. I'm going to weaken that just a bit. And I'm going to take that and just, I don't know, bring it down a level or two so that maybe things aren't going so well for them. And then finally at your top levels, you can either create a strand or cut one, which has its own dangers in it.
Oh, yeah.
So doing this, it is less about seeing the future, but more about affecting it. because when you're stretching or shrinking, you're literally saying, okay, I'm changing the way the bonding between two individuals or between an individual and something.
Mm-hmm.
And in that sense, I can say like, well, if, this prince and this merchant have an amazing bond and this great commerce between them, and I start bringing that down, maybe it affects their perception of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe something comes in, like maybe the prince's son is now found to be cheating on the merchant's daughter, that they were supposed to be married, and it's found out on the wedding day. Then that starts breaking down that connection. Again, that's all things that are happening because they're giving caveat to the story. They're given a little bit of editing.
Right.
And I think that kind of divination is a different form of it.
Yeah, it's certainly different because in a lot of games, like 5th edition specifically, you either glean like an immediate mechanical effect out of it, like you said, like getting an advantage on your next attack or something like that, or it gives you information,
right?
Wheel or woe, or even just up to like scrying or something like that, where you're going to get a get to spy on a remote location or something like that.
Right.
But this allows you to kind of just like dip your fingers right directly into the plot and just be like, hold on a second. I see the strings that literally control the system here. Let me tug on a few of them.
Right.
And see where this gets
break
us.
them.
Yeah.
At high enough levels, I mean, it's reminiscent to saying like wish. Like, I wish this person didn't exist.
Yeah.
Like, that's some powerful crap right there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have something which I read about more than anything else, which is like Destiny, which is a system where instead of the divination being a normal kind of thing that you do, you ask a question and the response creates an entry, basically a hard entry in the world. If you ask the question, where will I find the Sword of Might? And the storyteller goes, you will find it in the darkest forest. Guess what? That is now a rule. It is going to be found in the darkest forest. And that's, I think, true judicious editing. You're giving the players a GM tool to a degree.
Yep.
You're giving ultimate truth, in those kind of things. And that system literally uses it as truth.
And so it's a little bit dangerous, but at the same time, it can be a lot of fun if that's the sort of game that you're playing. I mean, it depends on the sort of control that you want and need over your plot.
Right.
I don't think I would personally do that in my 5th edition game, but like in a game like, say, Adventure, they've already got rules for like dramatic editing in it,
right,
where, you do leave blank spots on the map. You leave plot holes. You just kind of you have things that are going on, but you don't have something written,
right.
And so when you have that opportunity to write things in, this can be a really great system for just going, okay, it is now destined that you will find it there.
Right. And I like it. I think it's a different form of storytelling. It is the more cooperative sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
You were just going to play with that cable.
I'm not playing with the cable. It's dangling down like where my right hand literally is, and every time I bump it, and Kate is giving me the look.
She's not.
I'm just going to need to ask you not to look at it, breathe near it, don't touch it, no eye contact.
I would
she
say
has been staring daggers at me since the second time I bumped the cable.
It's just
and that has been 3. So I am officially on Kate's shit list.
That's right.
I'm going to get a golf counter.
Yeah,
right. Right.
Click. You'll be like the person at the front of Sam's Club checking people in and doing the count.
She's over the blackboard like minutes since Sarah bumped cable, and she's like erasing the 3 and putting a 0 in there now.
So knowing that we've got these types of things, I think one of the biggest things that I wanted to or not one of the biggest things, but one of the kind of midpoints is this can cause problems between players and storytellers.
Yes.
And it kind of comes in 3 flavors that I was looking at, and that is when you give too much information. You have players always kind of having the upper hand. And I think
that's really where the adversarial thing comes from, because DMs don't want the players to always have the upper hand. Then it cheapens the plot and it cheapens everything, and they just walk all over your big bad evil guy and stuff like that. So I think there's a
wow, I feel called out.
What? You didn't divine anything.
No, we didn't.
That
We
that
just kicked his ass.
No,
Huh?
you just kicked his ass. That was complete other failure on my part.
Yeah, let's be honest.
But no, I think that's really the source right there is that whole like giving too much information, which gives too much power, and then players will use that power to utterly trivialize the big bad evil guy.
But then if you give too little or useless information,
then it's not even worth it.
well, not only that, but the investment that the players have done is to waste.
Yes.
If they don't and then you have the kind of mid-range in there, which is it's too cryptic. Where you've got, you give them a riddle that honestly they just aren't good at. They read it totally wrong. And now you're like, oh, ha, 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 you got to the end and you actually thought it was going to be water that would destroy the witch. But in fact, what I meant to say by falling from the sky was a lightning bolt and you just didn't recognize that. Well, shit, how are we supposed to figure that out from your cryptic riddle?
Right. Right.
And I think the difference comes in is it given by plot or did the players make an action and basically make an effort to do a discovery. And if that is coming out, then that needs to be fact or it needs to be beneficial. And I think that's where things come back is that if you're just giving exposition in a divinational way, where nobody's divining, or it is a lesser divination type of thing where it's a yes no answer and you're basically waffling because there really is no yes no answer. That's one thing. But if you're getting to a point where they're communing, like it's they're shooting off 5th to 7th level spells or doing specific rituals or spending in certain systems spending assets of their player, like in 7th using that could cost them.
Oh yeah, because in 7th, what is it? You have to like essentially take on bad luck dice into your pool, to affect fate in a positive manner.
Correct. Well, or take damage.
And then when those bad luck dice come up certain ways, it like compounds failure for you.
Well, it causes fate lashes, which are permanent damage.
Oh, okay. So
not
so
damage
there's that.
Yeah. So not like damage you can recover, but literally lashes of fate on your body, which like literally takes monumental things to get rid of those permanently removed dice. It's kind of like if a fighter gets touched by a ghost but could never recover those hit points without spending a level.
Okay, so important safety tip.
Yeah. If you're going to be a fate witch, be careful.
Yeah.
Success is great, but the whole thing is that if they're spending to do it, then they should get a positive result.
You should get some sort of thing out of it. Yeah. Knox in the Box is asking, divination that provides a misleading perspective, good, bad, true events, but shown with an odd angle.
Again, I think if it's exposition and it's perception based, I think that's fine. But I think if they do scrying on somebody and you're deliberately red herring them, because I want to scry on this guy who's the bad guy, right? And when the eye of scrying looks in the area, they basically see him having boning some girl, and you're like, okay, well, what am I getting out of this?
Free porn.
Yeah. But it's like, is that helpful to them?
Yeah.
Or do they see that he's on a ship?
Right.
And they can see that maybe there's they can see the flag of the Marauders, that's the captain of the Marauders that he's with right now in bed.
Yeah.
Okay, so that gives you some things, but maybe it's a red herring because he's actually not there and the whole thing was set up. I think that's a misnomer. I think that's improper.
Yeah, I think you definitely shouldn't be deliberately misleading.
Correct, because again, they're paying for this.
Yeah, if they draw incorrect conclusions, that's on them.
Now, on the other hand, if it's expositional, I would say, for instance, they come up to a pool and someone who's not doing a formal divination that's part of a spell or something, and this pool is a scrying pool, and oh, that's right, that means we could do this to it, and they, do something, and it's minor, and it gives them a view, maybe then, because it's expositional.
Sure.
It's not something that they're actively investing in.
One of the things that got me actually thinking about this too was in your 7th games, it's very common for you, and I don't really know much about storytelling 7th, so maybe this is even like suggested outright in the rules. But using those meanwhile scenes,
Right. Oh, yeah.
where you literally just expose a scene that like the bad guys are doing.
Yeah.
And you have, the Inquisition coming in and shaking down the local merchants for information about us. And like we are dozens of miles away from this when this happens, you know, and it's not something we're overseeing. It's literally just the camera cuts away.
Yeah.
And now here is this scene of these Inquisition people going, you tell us the last place that you saw them, which direction were they heading? Well, they were heading east. And then we're all sitting at the table going, oh crap, we went east.
Yeah.
Now they're onto us, but we don't know that in character. But it was really cool to hear that they're onto us, and now there's this sense of dread,
Yeah.
But I think, in other systems where it's not as explicitly stated that, you should do something like that, less cinematic systems, I suppose.
Right.
Divinations, especially like scrying and stuff like that, offers you this really choice opportunity to do that.
Exactly.
You want to see what the big bad guy's doing? Oh, absolutely. Drop in a scene that will light their eyeballs on fire.
Yeah.
He is knocking on the door of the ancient temple that you were trying to stop him from getting into, and oh crap. You know?
Yeah. I always like giving direct truths. Like, for instance, in the case of the 7th game that you were talking about, I had a Fate Witch in it who was very powerful and very directed. And so I literally told all the other players, we're going to play out a scene. I want you to act like everything is going as it's going. But understand, I'm going to cut it at some point, and it will be a dream. So if your characters are going to die, just accept it.
Oh, was this the ambush with the carriage?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that.
So we went through the whole scene. The one player who was the diviner in us didn't know, but everyone else knew what was going on. We played through the entire scene. 2 characters just died, basically,
I think one of them was mine.
Yeah, we're unconscious. Another one, she had run off into the woods, and in the woods she was caught.
Yeah.
And saw who it was who was really orchestrating the whole thing. And moments before her own death, she wakes, and everybody is just right there back at breakfast. And she's like, "What happened? What do you mean what happened?
What happened? They
It's
didn't give me any hot sauce for my eggs,
everybody
is
went.
what happened.
And what was neat was you all just went right back to the moment that things started, and like didn't. And she was just like, I said, and it feels like it was all a dream. You start getting the carriage ready for heading out. And literally everyone replayed their moments.
And then just start redoing the scene. And like trying to think back, like, what did I say at this point? Oh, that's right.
That's right. And it was beautiful, and it was wonderful, and I think it showed the impact of how powerful her character really was. And it was a fun scene to do that way.
Yeah.
It gave a little bit of framing for how dangerous things were about to be.
It took a lot of prep work, but I think everyone involved, especially the diviner herself, really got a great experience out of that scene. I mean, I was just one of the extras in it, but you know,
but
I remember it was amazing.
Is that I think you can do certain things to make divination be a positive thing in your game.
Yeah.
And I kind of outlined some points, but I think these points are kind of valid to everything. But I'm going to focus on divination just because I think that all players matter. I think that regardless of if they're a fighter or a bard or a thief, they all matter. So
yeah, whatever you're in that group to do, you should be able to do.
And as a storyteller, you need to be prepared for it.
Yes.
If you see a character who's literally remembering divination or moving down that path, be prepared for it.
Oh, well, it's like we said a dozen times before, you know, be a fan of your characters.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. So literally my first point was be prepared.
Oh, yeah.
If you have a D&D person who's doing it, be prepared for it. If you're doing something like 7th where a person is going for future sight, you know, or an adventure game, or any of those games where you've got that as a possibility, if you're unprepared for them to be able to do that at that level, maybe steer them away, but challenge yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
Be a fan of them, give them access a little bit, and be prepared for those scenes and work with them on how you want to do those things out. Because you may need to do some house differences for it in the game. Because not a lot of game systems are great at describing how you should react to it. I think 5th edition did a good job after all the editions of making what divination really is, and even they kind of just give you a very soft edge at the higher levels.
Yeah.
Whereas like 7th is just like, give it to them. This is how it comes out. You can be a little cryptic, but for the most part, boom, give it to them. And then just add a lot of flavor.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
the other thing I think about being prepared too is a lot of times we're very in the moment as storytellers, and we're really focused on where the group is and what the group is doing.
Yep.
But if you've got someone who can scry or can see the future or something like that in their group, you do need to keep in mind at least just in the back of your head, just a few little notes about what maybe your villain is doing.
in general,
What maybe some of his henchmen are up to at any given moment.
Right.
You don't need to know exact dialogue or exact settings or anything. Just think like, okay, if they scry on the big bad evil guy, what's chances he's doing something right now?
right,
Right. So, and give him something for it. Give him some. Make him be doing something.
right. You don't want to
meaningful.
just catch him on the toilet.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know? I think that's just silly.
He's playing words with friends on the crapper. Yeah.
exactly.
There you go. There's your 4th level spell.
Yeah. I think on the other hand, you also kind of need to make sure you're consistent. So at various levels of what you're doing, you can't just be at the beginning very open and honest with them, and then suddenly 5 sessions in, suddenly when they scry, it's cryptic and blurry,
Right.
You can't quite make out everyone, but you can tell what's going on. It's like, no, either make the expectation straightforward or always give them that same perception, that same odd kind of glossy protection, and make sure that the NPCs are also in that same style. In other words, you can't say, that there is an opposed role all the time. If there's an opposed role, make an opposed role and make it obvious and make a narrative of it. But if you're not doing it that way, then it doesn't happen that way. There has to be consistency there.
Yeah.
And if there's one person who's taught me consistency over and over again, it's Overwatch. And he drives me nuts about it, but if you don't have consistency in your game, you will lose your players. You will lose interest.
You will.
So remember consistency. It's important. And if you have to break consistency because something's not working right, be honest about breaking consistency, about what you have to change.
Bring it right up with your players and just
Yeah.
be like, all right, look, guys, we've been seeing this happen, and I'm not liking the direction that's going in the game. Can we discuss a house rule or something? You know?
Or I read this wrong.
Or just outright, I effed up.
Yeah. And we're going to keep going with this direction, but understand I'm going to have to rephrase this at some point in my mind, maybe another game.
Yeah.
But I will keep it this way because I screwed it up the first time, and we're just going to keep going in that direction.
Players are people; they'll understand.
Exactly. Crafty. This is where things get a little gray.
Yeah.
And this is where I think you can play a little bit of the red herring card early. I don't think that everything needs to be done this way. I still think you need to give honesty and insight. But for instance, if your players are, like in the case of 7th Sea, if I look at a certain villain and I say, I want to see this villain's strands because I he's at a dinner party. I want to know what his strongest strands are. Make a roll. Oh, you had a successful roll, but not a super successful roll. So maybe you can only see the strongest and the first one after that. So you see, the strand between him and the primary protagonist, and it's obviously conflict, but his next strand is a love strand to the mayor's wife.
Ooh.
Exactly. And you're like, okay, so there's something going on there.
Yeah.
And it could be a subplot that really has nothing to do with the main plot, but maybe there is a bubbling romance there.
Sure.
That you could play with. It's still a truth. It is still something that could be used and is still a benefit, but it's not the main plot.
Right. I'm not just handing you, oh yeah, and he's doing this and he's doing that. It's like, no, he's actually got like a crush on a married woman, and there's like a little thing going on there, you know.
Nor am I scrying his desk while, he's working in his office and I'm watching him sign away, all of these things under someone else's name, and then he picks up a stamp and stamps on it, and it's this other guy's document, but it's clearly him doing it, and that document is, shipping orders of something, and you're like, oh, that must be important. But in fact, what you failed to notice that was the document directly underneath it was the one that was where he's going to, where the actual shipment's going to. No, you're never going to red herring a scry. A scry tells you a truth, and a truth that's important. I'll red herring if you break into his office and search around and fail, and don't make your investigation roll. I might give you a red herring there. But if you've spent the time and done it, I see no problem with it, being something that is additional.
Mm-hmm.
So, riddles and half-truths, I've always had a problem with.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Just because not all players are as crafty, as players, but their characters might be.
I saw a great post on Tumblr, I think it was. It was something to the effect of like, Googling riddles for toddlers or something like that.
Nice.
for the D&D game, and somebody was like, "Wow, that's just insulting." And there were a couple of people kind of jumped in and they were like, "No, really though."
Yeah.
Like, we're not like master cryptographers.
No.
And a lot of people, especially when you've got a lot of other stuff going on and there's goblins attacking this town over here and the princess is still missing and the dragon might be actually a super wizard or something like that. There's a lot of other information going on than just, how do we solve this complex riddle? And not every, session of D&D needs to turn into the damn Da Vinci Code,
Oh my God.
Exactly. So yeah, toddlers for riddles for toddlers. Like, not everybody's brain works the same way.
Exactly, and that's kind of one of the questions that came out of this was the one that I posted for everybody, which was, when do you give your players help, or do you give your players help? And I think that with stuff like riddles and ciphers and stuff like that, you have to be careful. It'd be one thing to give it in that form and then let them kind of mull it a little bit right there, and then in meta be like, this is what your character understands it to mean. And at that point, you've given this beautiful environmental fun thing because, the person was communing with the master of riddles, to get an answer, and you knew it was going to be cryptic, but at the same time, he knows what it means.
Yeah.
He's pretty confident he's got an answer on it, and that's the truth. But you still made it beautiful,
Sure.
I'm confused. Welcome to the puzzles and riddles section. So what it really comes down to is have fun. I think that divination can come in all flavors. I think that players should be able to play with that. I think that, if they want to do divining in a specific way, let them do it that way. I think you can have a lot of fun with that.
Oh, yeah.
I think that the spell is one thing. I think the ritual act of doing it can be another, and you can have a lot of fun with that. But be aware that some people consider that a faith. And like my wife originally when we started 7C was very concerned about their use of tarot in the game.
Yeah.
And I, again, had to help remind her, it is a randomization. Like there's a system in the game where you can literally use a tarot deck to come up with the background and skills for your character instead of picking them. And I think that's neat. It's a randomizing kind of fun way to do it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, she's like, I'm not pulling cards out of a tarot deck for my character. Like that's almost like blasphemy. And I'm like, I'm with you. We're not actually using a tarot deck. We're coming up with a randomizing method, and they just found this as a neat randomizing method.
Right,
but
right.
Be aware that might be something that your players could take a little bit of offense to.
Sure.
At any time. At the same time, like we talked about with like True Strike, in the difference from advantage makes for making a difference in combat. Add some flavor. Let the act that the mage did, and in giving the person True Strike mean something. That there was foresight that somehow they gave them, like, you remember back to when they touched you, a quick flash of the armor laying on the ground that you had recovered from the armory was worn and the straps were broken. So instead of slashing your sword down, you decide to turn and slash up just under the plate, breaking free the plate and gashing the arm completely.
Yep.
So that's the advantage, disadvantage. You had foresight there. And I think that kind of adds some flavor and gives kudos back to the person who did it.
We were talking a little bit before the show about one of my favorite storytellings of a divination in play. And that was from the Demon the Fallen book by White Wolf. And there was a couple of demons that were in some sort of massive battle, and one was basically about to just like death stroke the other.
Right.
And in that last second before the blow landed, he used one of his abilities, basically allowed him to see fate, and reality shatters like glass in front of him, and there are thousands of facets of glistening reality essentially dangling like a broken mirror in the air before him, and he starts really quickly looking over all of them, each reflecting a different facet of a possible outcome to this. And he real quick like reaches up and grabs one and goes, okay, this one sucks, I'm gonna fall off the roof, but at least I lived through this one.
Right.
And when he grabs the piece of glass,
That event happens.
reality resumes, and yep.
I like that. I think it's really cool. In contrast to that, I was reading a story where a wizard who knew divination was trying to find a little girl before she got sacrificed, and she had come to this waterfall, and behind it was supposed to be this temple, and she gets there to find it sacked. And the object that's in there was kind of irrelevant, but it was what text was written with it. She knew it was already going to be taken. She was just hoping the text wasn't destroyed. And like 100 years prior, somebody had sacked it. And she's like, well, shit, it's useless. So she's trying to figure out what she's like, well, I can't really go back in time. She goes, but maybe I can. And so she changed reality, or she looked at an alternate reality that was current to hers, but where the thief who was breaking in there and sacked it wasn't, like, got stuck in the lock,
Wasn't successful
and died. So she comes here, and now there's his bones, but she's in this alternate reality, and she knows how to get inside because she's already been in the tomb. And so she was able to get through the lock, gets inside, kind of ignores the stuff that's laying around, but finds the one document she needs, reads it, and then takes another step, and now she's through the waterfall right back to her normal time, but she knows what was written on the text.
Yeah.
And she can move on. So I thought that was a really neat way of doing divination.
That's a real cool way. Yeah.
It was, but it was just divination in a different way. The other thing that I was saying is that when you have something like a moment of power, or a very powerful yes, no, there's nothing to say that when they throw the bones and it comes up death, that it's just laying there in front of them like a stark reality. Remember, you still have mood that you can throw at it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, those bones could literally burst into flames, or a plume of dark smoke rises from them, and suddenly it starts raining.
One of the tropes I've always loved about like casting bones or runes or something like that has always been when they snap mysteriously and almost magnetically into place.
Yes,
where like instead of just tumbling and like, oh, they landed, wherever they would logically land when you cast them, all of a sudden they go whoop, and they rank up.
Yeah, and
you're
it's
like,
oh.
Okay, it's not
that's
just
what's going on.
It's not just yes; it's very yes.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody did a thing that was they were doing a Ouija board, and it was the only thing that, like, this guy is like effectively God, now I can't think of his name. Anywho, he's a paranormal researcher, but actually is a demonologist, and so he kind of uses that as a cover.
Sure.
And like they're like, we need to find this girl, like, now she's gonna die, and he's looking around for anything: bones, stones, cards. He's like, do you have a deck of cards? No. Like, my dad was a horrible gambler, so we don't have that. Like, do you have anything? And he looks over in the corner, and there's like games, and he sees Ouija, and he's like, son of a, and he grabs the Ouija board out, sets it down, takes the buck, and he starts his hermetic magic. And as he's doing it, he like brings the puck. He's like, okay, now everybody put your hands on the puck. And then as soon as they all put their hands on the puck, they're like, oh my God, it's so hot. They move their hands off of it. It melts. And then the Ouija board folds itself like origami to write out text.
Oh my God.
And he's like, well, that's kind of direct.
Well, hell.
And I was like, well, I guess it means we need to go to the church. Okay, we're going to the church.
hey, buddy. Yeah. At least it worked.
Yeah. But that's the kind of thing is that sometimes you need to have those powerful moments. And I think divination allows you as a GM to basically smack the characters hard sometimes, like back to plot.
Yeah.
So you can use it for that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Lean into it.
Yeah. And then allow that dramatic license to enhance the experience for that player. Because again, you have the flourishes from combat. We're all used to that. You know,
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
beautiful to go into lengthy details about how combat works out. I love how at the end of the finishing move, how do you want to finish it? Like, you always do that. Like whether this NPC is dying, how would you like to finish this off?
And like our rogue, dodges under the swing of the fighter, coming up on the blind spot of the enemy, and like with her dagger, just as she's rising from the crouch, drives it up under their sternum, lifting them up off of the ground, and then uses that momentum to just place them on their back, driving that dagger home. You know.
And that's a beautiful finish.
Why aren't we doing that with divinations? Or really any other spells or anything like that?
Take it out of combat. Like social combat is the same way. There's no reason why you can't do that in all aspects. Take the time, think about it, register that the players are making an effort, and add a flourish to it.
Yeah.
Give them something a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every aspect can have a little bit of flavor.
Be a fan of your players.
There you go. You go. Right back to it.
Yeah.
All right. We are, I think, into questions. As I think we have good questions that are fun, functional questions. And I'm hoping that okay, Knox is back. Whew, worried.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
he
you
plays.
do.
He plays a shadow monk in our in our thing. Yeah,
Definitely.
no, absolutely, man.
Yeah, go do it.
Don't just say flurry of blows.
No.
Tell us what those blows
That's right.
are, man.
That's right.
All
right. So
and remember, for doing dope monk shit, unarmed strike means kicks, punches, knees, headbutts, elbows,
flying butt pliers, whatever.
Yes. Don't call it a butt slam.
Butt slam.
Change my mind. You can call it a butt slam.
All right, so let's hit some of these up. I'm actually going to start with Technolich.
Okay.
Should divination of future events be solid information or possible future?
Depends.
I would say if the divination, again, I come back to, did the players make a cost now? Like, was there cost?
Yep.
Was there effort? Was there cost? Was time and effort? Is it a specific class? Is there energy put forth against that at a certain time? Yes. Then I think it should have a beneficial, positive frame for that player. On the other hand, if it's meant to be expositional, it's possible. Foresight is just that. It's foresight. You can tell them that if they follow these events, this is the outcome. And then you set those events as options. If they don't make those events, then they know the outcome's going to be different.
Yeah.
Like how do I catch him? And you're like, you see a water pitcher sitting on the edge of a wall, just barely set down by a maiden. It's on the second floor. As the view slowly changes down to the courtyard, you see, Vinsoni, the man you're looking for, standing directly underneath it. And then it tips slightly off the ledge and starts to tumble. Down, down. That's it. So there's a pitcher. If we knock the pitcher off the ledge when he's underneath it, we'll get him.
I don't know.
And then combat starts.
Uh-huh.
And as you're like, okay, well, he just got away. No, he didn't. I go to the second floor. You see a pitcher on a ledge. I shove it off. You hear a shattering noise and a bunch of people scurrying below asking if he's okay.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep.
And that's the thing, is that you can foreshadow and give them something, but it doesn't necessarily have to change the outcome of the fight. Because they may have won that fight clearly and done something totally different, in which the pitcher is still there. They just got him a different way.
Yeah. If Terminator,
on the other hand,
if Terminator taught us anything, it's that there is no future but what we make for ourselves.
I suppose that's true. You know what? We're not going to get into time looping and for, you know what? I'm not doing that right now. Hit me another question.
All right. So Overwatch would like to know the old misconstrued prophecy chestnut. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Use it in your games? Have you had it used on you?
I've had it used on me once.
Mm-hmm.
I've used it in a game.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have to say that I don't necessarily... I like it as a plot device, but I think discovery of what it is comes to a truth.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never had it used on me in a game. I have only ever used a prophecy once in a game, and it was not a misconstrued one.
Right.
It was a blatant truth given to the players, and I think I agree with you. I think if it's misconstrued, I think it needs to come to a truth. Like I don't think you use it to screw the players over.
Mm-hmm.
Like kind of like and this isn't really a prophecy as much, but it kind of fits where I'm thinking with it is like the whole Nazgul thing, the Witch King only being able, no man can kill me.
Right.
Well, I am no man.
Right.
It's kind of along those lines of like, it's prophesied that, no man will be able to do such and such and such a thing.
Right.
So a woman hero steps up and does it.
Sure.
And everybody thought like, oh my God, this was impossible. No, the prophecy said no man.
Right.
Like, period.
Right.
Right.
We were trying to give you a framing of it. Like,
right. I think maybe that's how you use it.
I like that. That. But again, I wouldn't put that into divination so much as that is plot.
Yeah, that's more.
It's
more
exposition.
Well, yeah, but I mean, but it's still still a prophecy.
Yeah,
All right, your prophecies are going to be part of your plot. Yeah,
right.
Sure.
I mean, Thor Ragnarok had a good one in the sense that he had a constant dream of Ragnarok happening and destroying his lands, and he had to stop it.
And then he realized that he wasn't dreaming about it so he could stop it. He was dreaming about it so he could cause it.
Right.
Yeah.
That it would come about and that would end the terror that was about to behold. And I think that was interesting and it was good discovery.
Yeah.
And I think as a continuing story where you have players who have the means of discovery like that, there's nothing to say that they couldn't have come to that resolution a lot sooner. But it works. I think the more cryptic you get, the more prophecy you put in, I think the farther you get away from whether your players are going to understand it or give a crap about it. Mm-hmm. So, yep.
All right.
Yep.
Hit me. What have we got?
Knox, should divination be done with one system or method only, like commune or speak with dead, to keep it simple to follow, or purposely vague with various signifiers?
So I don't think any of your storytelling should ever be the same way twice. From the standpoint of like each individual character is their own individual thing.
Yes.
So Knox, I know you are you watch Critical Role, so I'm going to phrase it a little bit like this. So when Jester uses her divinations, because she worships the god of mischief, the Traveler, he appears to her in his green cloak just on the edge of her vision, and he gives her very direct, if maybe a little playful answers. Whereas when Caduceus, who is a nature worshiper and follows the Wild Mother, uses his scrying, oftentimes his answers come in very, very easy to interpret, but things like shifts and temperatures of the winds or scents that may drift across him, or flower petals wilting before him as they catch his attention or something.
Right.
So, those are very different styles and methods for the exact same spells to be story told.
Whether or not you commune with dead and a ghost appears before you out of a grave, or the gravestone itself shifts and gives you words for a moment, or
speak with dead. Does the corpse actually take a deep breath and look up at you? Does it become animated for a time, or do you just hear ghostly whispers from its completely inanimate form?
Yeah, or does it take the body and shape of the person who it fully animates, sits up, has a drink and a conversation with you?
Right.
I think that has a lot to do with the scene and what is meant to be told. So I would say start with what the player wants to do and then add flavor. No different than combat.
And some of that too is going to depend on the mood too.
Totally.
If you want something spooky, then yeah, absolutely have that rotten corpse animate and describe how its dead, swollen tongue is flopping around inside of its mouth and, etc. Or if you're looking for something maybe a little more uplifting and hopeful, have the slightly glowing, softly glowing, translucent spirit of the dead body step up beside you and go, "Oh, is that me? You're like, yes, friend, I'm sorry it is, but I need to ask you some questions. Of course, sit with me for a while and we'll talk,
Or go for a walk.
Yeah. There can be a lot of different ways of adjudicating it for evoking different things.
Right. And there's nothing to say that you can't do something as crazy as like in Paranorman at the very end where literally there was combat effectively happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to the moment where reality shifts and suddenly he's standing there with the original person in a totally different place having a conversation and then wakes up next to the tree
Mm-hmm.
in contemporary day and everyone's like, are you okay? You got knocked out right at the end of the fight. Oh. No, I think everything's going to be just fine.
Yeah.
And that's that you can have those types of moments as well.
Mm-hmm.
Where it doesn't break continuity for everyone else.
Yeah, sure.
So, all right, hit me with another one.
All right, so Vedran. Vedran comes in with, how do you balance powers like divination between utility/fun and potentiality of game-breaking elements?
I think it depends on the system. I think most systems take a good care of what you're allowed to give.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that game-breaking is a hard thing to really frame. Because what is game-breaking versus what is the player successful at?
Yeah, that's my big, not problem with the question, but you see where I'm going with it. Like that's my sticking point with this is how do you define game breaking?
Right.
Is telling the is telling the players that the ancient king is asleep in his tomb, undisturbed. Is that game breaking, or is it game breaking to say that in his tomb with him he has two other caskets with him, or I don't know. I mean,
right.
Where do you hit the game breaking point?
Right. Yeah, I agree with that, and that's where I'm kind of I concern myself with what people consider game breaking.
Mm-hmm.
If the player, like in the case of 7C, makes a success that's 25 over what the TN for success was for this,
mm-hmm.
yeah, they got the raises to get the values that they needed. Sure, they're going to get a ton of information out of that.
Yeah, sure.
That's no different than a crit or a double crit, or however you want to say it,
mm-hmm.
in whatever system. Yeah, shit's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So...
And, keeping in mind, too, that, especially spells like scrying and whatnot that allow you to glean information or even maybe spy upon the big bad evil guy, not necessarily even game breaking in and of themselves, because you still have to act upon that information.
Yeah.
Knowing that, and this is kind of one of the, like the current sort of ish plots in Critical Role right now, mm-hmm. is like even knowing that the big bad evil guy is heading to this ancient tomb,
right,
to get this powerful artifact to resurrect this ancient evil,
right,
does you no good unless you can stop him from getting the ancient artifact.
Right.
You still have to act on that information. Like, that's great. You know exactly where he's going. Good luck.
Another perfect example, I wouldn't say perfect example, but a good example
mm-hmm.
is Luke on the ship. My father's on that ship. I shouldn't have come.
I'm endangering the mission.
Right.
I shouldn't be here.
The question is, did he divine Vader, or did he realize Vader was divining him?
Or was it reciprocal?
And that's you look at moments like that, and that is powerful in both directions.
Uh-huh.
So don't just think about it one way. If your wizards can define or can detect it, use it on them. Be like, there's a scrying eye on you right now. You can feel its presence.
Uh-huh.
It's watching everything, even your thoughts. Like, oh crap, they know about us.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
At that point you feel a little off. Or maybe a player, maybe somebody else has foresight on the NPC team.
Yeah.
And suddenly like an attack just feels weird. Like, how did he know I was going to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Shit happens sometimes. So I think that you've got a lot of potential game breaking that people would see as game breaking, but it actually can just create some very dramatic moments.
Mm-hmm.
So
what's really going to bake your noodle later is would you have still broken it had I not said anything?
Exactly. Exactly.
One of my favorite divination related lines ever.
No, and yet she's like, and you're going to leave here and you're going to feel right as rain.
Yep.
And it's like, and he does. Oddly, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, cool. Let's get one more question in before we wrap this puppy up.
All right. What is your favorite approach to divination in a game setting? This comes from the Mad Elf.
Seven Seas grown on me.
Okay.
I don't think it's my favorite.
Okay.
I think I kind of like the editing idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Destiny does that. I want to say either Aeon or Adventure does that. I can't remember.
Adventure does it, but it's
Okay.
not a divination thing. It's
Yeah.
just it's more of a fate thing,
Right.
That your characters are just fated to succeed, kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
that fate's kind of got their back, and so if they know a guy,
Right.
and they've got really phenomenally good luck.
Yeah. And I think I kind of like that editing, because it incorporates the players more into the story.
Yeah,
So-
that's definitely it.
Yeah.
I gotta say, probably for my answer, I'm a big fan of like the entire school of divination in Dungeons and Dragons, specifically 5th edition.
Okay.
Because I like the multiple different facets it takes.
Okay.
And unlike previous editions, I think playing a diviner wizard is an honest to goodness great choice. Because, first off, the School of Divination gives you the ability to, just at the beginning of the game session, you just roll 2d20, and you just write those numbers down. Whether they're good or bad, you just write them down.
Yeah.
And then during play, you can basically substitute any die 20 roll with that number.
Yours or theirs.
Yours or theirs. Any die 20 roll.
Yeah.
So, the ogre takes a big swing at you, and you rolled a 2 earlier. You can just take that 2, one of your 2 numbers for the day, and just say, the ogre has a 2 instead to hit me.
Right.
Or, you rolled a 19 and you rolled an 8 to hit. You can just make it a 19 now.
Yeah.
It expends one of your 2 for the day, but it's just that little glimpse of foresight that your character gets. And that's just like a base level ability. That's not even a spell, You start getting into the multiple different spells like auguries and
Right.
scryings and true strike and
Commune and all that stuff.
commune and all that sort of stuff. And I really think that it offers you a lot of different options for fun gameplay, as long as you do have a good storyteller that's willing to work with you on it, not craft an adversarial relationship with you about giving you the information, and make it fun to role play.
Like Luck the Gnome is I think a fantastic character type.
Yep.
Where basically like you use divination in the sense that you just kind of don't have bad things happen to you. All of your kind of spell casting for divination just pushes you into the right places at the right time. You know that the merchant was looking for a rose petal because he needed one more for something, so it's exceptionally valuable to him. Funny that, stuff like that. I think that's fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
We do have to kind of wrap up here. Next week. So next week's topic, I think we had that down as pacing.
Yes.
However, that was before Knox in the Box interjected.
He did.
So, do we want to do pacing, or do we want to do the Knox in the Box mystery episode 3000?
Tune in next time and find out.
We'll let you know on the Discord, though.
All right, hit us up, Kate.
You can find us on Twitter at st_conclave. You can also find us on Instagram, also at st_conclave, and on Discord. I tweeted out the link for Discord again today, but it is the pinned tweet on our Twitter profile, as well as in every single bit of show notes that we put on there. So just click on the information for any individual show, and you will see the link to Discord. Join us on there. We'd love to have you join the discussion. Shoot us some questions for a discussion topic for the week. We'd love to see you there.
Also, please join us on Patreon if you'd like to support us at patreon.com/Storyteller Conclave, just like Knox did. Woohoo! All right, our intro music is Beyond the Warriors by Guy Frog. That can be found at guyfrogmusic.weebly.com or on Spotify under the same name. Our outro music is Only in the Footprints in the Sand by Midair Machine. That can be found at freemusicarchive.org. We record here at Podcast Detroit. That's podcastdetroit.com, or Twitter at Podcast Detroit. Our engineer tonight is Kate, and always fantastic.
We'd like to give a big shout out to our families, Vicky and Sean. Thank you for supporting us. All of our friends for staying at our tables with us and playing these games over the years. And you, our listeners. Thank you. We love you.
Good night,
And good
everybody.
night.